Yo, 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 what's going on, CoD Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and today we are going to be taking a look at a couple big things that are coming up for the S2 Plus KvK group Kingdoms. Number one, we're going to give you a lay of the land for what the matchups are. So I was able to get some up-to-date information, at least as of about a day ago. So we're going to go through quickly on what are those alliances and kingdoms that are fighting against each other, so who's fighting who. Number two, we're going to look at 2 to 3 kingdoms because there could be some upcoming PvP that could and should be massive today at reset for the 25th, because that's when the protection shield does run out. Number three, we're going to look at some situations where our turrets becoming the new barricades and kind of how some of that is lining up. And then 4, we'll also talk about what some of the early game PvP versus the kind of west versus east side of a kingdom is, how the viability, the playability of that is long term, and what some of the early game effects could be. So without further ado, let's get into the first thing, which is showing you what the actual matchups are. Let's now go to our handy dandy notebook for my Blue's Clues fans out there, and we'll just kind of go top down. So the fight here for SS2-5, which is comprised of, and that's actually where the kingdom is we're in now, right? This is kind of how it looks, right? So again, it could be, and bear in mind, if any of this is out of date or if things have changed, please let me know in the comments down below and I will update my sheet so I can always keep you all up to date with, once again, the most recent fixings, if you will. So we have TMTA, which is S1, S63, HRT. We have S67, EXG, EXXL, S56, OF56, and then feet. On one side, for their unit, other unit is S83, that's GG. We have GG83 and 13. S33 is O66, S80 EMP, S38 KPT, UDF. Shout out to KPT, the alliance that I was in last season. Lovely people. And then we have a potential early Zone 1 fight, right, which we'll get to in a little bit. The next group is SS2-7. And for those of you that are curious, I did add a couple things onto this. Well, this is my private sheet, but this sheet, I added these in as well. So for those of you that are curious, right, if you just want to make that a little bit easier to see, I added the same column. But for this group, we have RTG, NK, feet versus OWL, BXS, RBG, and BDR. And then there's also a possible rogue player. This was kind of the last coordinates and the player name that we got. I'm sure they probably moved by now, but that could be a possible thing. Someone had mentioned it, but again, I haven't vetted that yet. But that's the matchup here for SS2-7, SS2-10. A little bit more of kind of multi-alliances from what I have found, or just different groups. So you have 84 that, from, again, when I was told this a day ago, they were by themselves. 3 and 48 were together, 65 by themselves. Shout out to 65, 64 and 47. But then the potential Zone 4 end could look something like this, where it's A Squiggly C, RKO, NXS, BG, pound signed N, I think, pound N, LN versus LNV, GD, WODI, and then some Merc groups. This was interesting, right, where S47 had told me that they had brought 2 alliances, so about 330 players into the zone, and then it went to crowded. So I'm wondering if the limit per starting zone is around 400 to 500, right? So that's just kind of a side note that I'm taking down, because to me it would be curious to figure out if we might be able to get a hard gauge on that. Then we get to SS2-9. And this is Laws, ANCS, and PGR versus everyone, or just any of the others that would fight, from what I understand. And then these are just some notes and comments that some players had shared with me. And then SS2-4, we have 75 Mio Tang versus 87. On the other side, 42 versus 89, 40, 25. But then in Zone 4, it could look as 87 Tang, Mio 75 versus 89, 42, 40, and 25. Right? And then again, just some explanations that they gave. And I want to point out, I really appreciate the people who give me context, because I like to add those notes in. For those of you that think I might just read it and move on, most of the time well, first and foremost, I will always read everything. But if the explanation is, objective, I like to include those where it's not, oh yeah, we're just bashing one side or the other. So I always appreciate that. So thank you very much for those of you that take the time to write those, because those are things I can include in videos because they're not coming off incredibly biased, as an example. Then we get to SS2-2. We have Tribe, VVV, SK1, SK2, formerly known as DNS, versus OG, ZOG, AEIS, and LSK. Zone 1 potential fight that's going to happen there. And then we have, I think, the last 2 getting close, SS2-8, which is FA, FSK, P-Hub, SLR, Fire, QV, or CUV, HOL versus BDO, PTW. And I like how pay to win and free to play are allies. That actually is very telling. Gives me a lot of hope for the game's direction. You guys are awesome. Okay, moving on. SS2-6. Don't ask me why this isn't centered. I have no idea why. It is actually kind of bugging me a bit. So let's do... we fixed it. Just had to manually type it. Look at that. We're awesome. Like a possum. 49, 50, 76 versus 28, 72, 78 versus 39, 59, and then 10 is unsure. This is interesting. There's 5 alliances and 4 kingdoms in Duar, Zone 1, so that's something we're taking note of. And then SS2-3, the last one, which is TFS / TNS versus Noor. We don't really know kind of what's going to happen with the others. This is the main fight that we know is going to happen. And then... I don't know why I have Noor unsure. I'll remove that. And then, of course, at the very bottom, I have this here, which is just kind of a nice, simple version. I don't know if I added it to this sheet. If I didn't, I will. Oh, I did. Cool. So you can see that here. I think that should be the same too. Yeah. So this should be the same on the public sheet that you can see. I just figured it was just easier. So if you want to kind of get some snapshots, you'll be able to do that there. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the early fights that could be happening. So we are here right now in SS2-5, where we have the Enagad fight. Oh, I'm sorry. Not this one. This is... Oh, yeah. No, this isn't. So it's EXGTM versus GG83 and GG13. Now, I think some name changes have transpired. So let's go take a look real quick. And I'm going to move this sheet over so I just have a nice quick reference. So this is where the fight is ending up. Right, so you can see here in Enagad Zone 1, we have EXG. There's actually a new alliance home that just popped up, GG83 and TM, and then you have GG13 that's down here. So I'm wondering what happened here, because they did have territory that was built. Interesting. So they're rebuilding the CF? Huh. I wonder what happened there, because I swear I thought they had territory. Oh, they might have removed it. Oh, I see. Maybe they removed it to do something, or maybe just get a better position, possibly. I'm not sure. I mean, again, though, I guess they're going to reconnect their flags here in a moment. They have, 13 minutes left? Yeah, I don't think that's not going to be like a not thing that's going to happen. But then we have, I think that was one of their flags too, possibly? Or is that an EXG flag? No, yeah, so this is a GG13 flag. And then, so like we said, right, you have EXG here. I don't know who home is. Right, EXG home. I'm going to assume maybe they're with EXG? I'm not sure. Maybe it's just another one. More people are TPing in. Or maybe it's just another CF they're going to use to maybe do some stalling. With that instead, you can see here, right, you have GG83. There's even some TM. They're just kind of... They're blocking, trying to block spots. You can see the turret game is ridiculous right now, and we're going to get to show you some of the goodies here. So if we scroll up, you can see GG83 TM, right? GG83 still expanding a little bit. TM, it looks like actually expanding a little bit more too as well, and end up finding a gap out. So the challenge here, though, is that you only have this choke point to go through. So this could be difficult if they're going to be able to build somewhere around here. However, they are getting blocked. I mean, look at this, dude. The terrain is just massive right now for what they're covering. And basically, this is kind of what the first 2 days is becoming. It's let's block out as many pixels as we can with units. And bear in mind, this is something that if you are in a spender alliance, you are allotted more of an opportunity to do something like this. Why? Because if you're spending, you may not necessarily need to go and grind resource gathering for the first couple days, right? You can maybe even get away with doing rotating shifts, so to speak, of going out and doing PvE just to burn your command points. Or maybe you send 4 marches here, but then you have 1 march that just goes out back and forth and it might take longer, but those are ways around that, right, where you can keep these units here. And the idea is they're blocking anyone from doing flag building. And I wonder if EXG would have had an opportunity to fill this gap a little bit earlier, where you see home placing the CF, right? Or maybe there just wasn't a way to do that. In addition, right, they could have went here and built southwest along the ridge, so they could have blocked them off as well, basically really, zoning them in. Again, obviously, it's kind of a he said, she said, or, should, coulda, woulda. But now let's look at where the main fight is probably going to take off, which is on this bridge. So TM controls the spire here. And for those that are curious, the spire range is decent, right? When you just kind of look at it zoomed out. I mean, it covers a wide range. But you can see here that the barricades, some barricades were built before the update came out. And I don't know if that's here, if it has come out. Here it is, yeah. So look, it came out and you can see it says, essentially, and again, I'm going to talk about this in a separate video, but it does say, right, they received a lot of feedback on how overpowering barricades are on the battlefield. After careful consideration, they decided to remove the barricade feature for S2 Plus season. Lords will not be able to build barricades, and any existing ones on the maps will be scrapped. However, I want to point out that they haven't scrapped all of them yet, right? So I don't know if there's a delay or what's going on, because the way that they made it sound is that all barricades on the map that had already been built will be removed, and that's obviously not the case because they're still here. However, when we look at the turret meta now, basically turrets have just been barricades have just been replaced by turrets, right? There's kind of what seems to be a no limit potentially on them, or you just have every single player from each of the alliances that are building them, if there is. Well, I'm sorry, and I do believe that there should be a limit, from what I should say, but is that limit maybe too high? I mean, we'll see. Clearly, you can see ice turrets are basically the majority. Same thing here, if you look on the TM side, right? So again, it's a lot. But this should be an exciting fight that's going to happen. Last one we're going to look at here is, let's see real quick, SS2-2. Here's where we're going to go. And this should be the last one, and then we're going to get into another conversation here in a moment, but I will at least want to show you guys off the second fight that is going to happen, which is going to be pretty massive today at Reset. So it should be pretty exciting, and then I'll kind of give my final thoughts on a couple things. So as this is loading up, hey girls, how we doing?
Good.
Are you guys hungry?
No.
Clearly, you guys just eat air, breathe water. You know what I mean? All right, so let's look here. And okay, so here we go, right? So this is where the next big fight is going to take place. This is going to be in Orion on SS2-2 between EIS going up against Trib/VVV. So you can see that we have, thanks, sweetie. I'm almost done. And then if we go in here, you can see we have Trib and Orange. They're with VVV, and they're going to be going up against EIS. Right, so essentially this is kind of where the fighting is going to happen. If we zoom in, you can just see once again how crazy it is right now when you're just looking at what's happening. Right now, this is interesting because Trib had their CF. I think that was actually over here, or no, maybe that was just VVV. I'm tripping. So yeah, maybe it was something else that happened. Fake. There we go. And they must have moved over. Also, I see. So they probably brought another alliance in, and then they just started moving their way up over here. Interesting. So Trib was able to get a new CF down, I guess, from what we saw last night when we were streaming. And then now you can see this is probably where the fight is going to happen. So it's, like I said, it's VVV. I'm assuming Fake is in there too as well, because they're building on that side. I don't know what their power is. Okay. So it's most likely just another alliance there to basically gap fill or space fill. But then when we look at it, right, you can see there's EIS and then you have VVV2. So this is going to be interesting, right? Because if this is the case, right, and VVV2 isn't, a smallish alliance. I think they were at almost 2 bill power when we looked. Yeah, so they're close, 1.9, right? So they'll have some people out there fighting. But then you have EIS here. They have Spire. And this is, they're kind of sandwiched at this point, right? But I would imagine, depending on how many players can get TP'd in here, because this is going to be difficult, right? You have to think about that. Once the fighting starts, if they still have players here that are filling the spaces, they may have to recall some of those troops or go and send some troops, which is going to open some space up for other players to get TP'd in, depending on what happens. So, but you could look at this. The turret game is crazy. There's just turrets everywhere that are being built. It is so, I don't want to say it's ridiculous. It is, let's be real, it is somewhat ridiculous. But again, we'll see what's going to happen. This is going to be another massive fight. I personally think I think both fights have some merit when you think about their unique qualities, where EIS is kind of getting pinched, and then you have the TM GG side that is kind of more even. It's like a northern battle, then you have a southern battle that's happening, but it's not really like anyone's kind of really getting pinched. So it will be interesting. The thing I like about the TATM fight more so in that kingdom is because this is really going to be their first big challenge, right? For those of you that may not know the history for TATM, they started in Kingdom 2, eventually migrated over to Kingdom 1 after King was assimilated into them. This happened in the S1 Plus season. And now they're kind of, rocking the OG Kingdom 1 there with their alliances. but they really haven't had what you would consider to be a really competitive matchup thus far. And so I'm excited to see how this plays out at reset. Now, the next things I want to touch on is this other idea, and I want to take a look at one last kingdom real quick, which is going to be SS2-3. And this is probably going to be the next big matchup that we're going to want to be looking out for. And where am I going? Oh, hang on. Is that 23? Is that why? It is. So we're going to go here to SS2-3. Now, this is going to be the TFS TNS Noir, right? So this is Jason Gee versus Mephisto, right? The two Goliaths, if you will, that are going to be going at it, right? And again, personality-wise as well, right? Being a little bit more well-known in the community. This is going to be a big matchup. However, the interesting part about this matchup that I wanted to touch on is that they are actually split pretty evenly. So if you look at this situation here, you have Noir that's on the east side. You have to remember the 3 starting regions on the right or the east side are split by this mountain range. So you have no way of getting to each other. The first interaction you could potentially have would be in Zone 3 at these runic statues. So you have Noir on one side, other groups, and then you have TFS here and TDR here. So the likelihood that we're going to see any action before that, they've taken more of a kind of west versus east side approach, whereas other kingdoms, even though, yeah, there still is some of that, I should say in some of the other kingdoms, not all of them, but in some of the other kingdoms, they took well, we're okay with landing in a different region, in a different Zone 1 region, even if it's not on the west or the east side of the map that is split by the kind of unpassable mountain range. And so we're probably going to see some early fights, but most likely it'll be in those Zone 2 neutral PvP areas compared to either waiting until Zone 3 for Runic or Zone 4, or if we get some early Zone 1. So if we're looking at all 9 of the KvK groups, I do think that there's a nice balance of, for when it comes for me, being able to see content, right, where we'll kind of get some early action, we'll get some mid-game action and some late-game action, referring more to kind of Zone 3, but really Zone 4. And so that's exciting. But when we think about, and this is the last thing I'm going to leave you with, is that the thing I would have liked, really, is I think when we look at kind of map opportunities and improvements, I think adding a neutral zone here in the halfway would have been great, so that way there still would have been an opportunity to fight there. In addition, adding a neutral PvP zone as well here, even below the runic statues, between the Zone 3s would have been great. I think those, to me, are 2 standout opportunities going forward, because you want to entice this idea of having constant potential PvP, right? And those, and doing it throughout each stage of a season, is how you're going to have better overall sustainable engagement from the players that know, hey, we can still fight at all of these opportune times, even if we're going to wait for the big fight at the end of the zone, right? So it's kind of this build up to a crescendo. That is something I would have loved to see, and hopefully they'll look at those potential adjustments, maybe, going forward, because I just think that would help a lot of the players as well, right? No one wants to feel like they're strapped in a situation like this. I'm sure if you look at where they are right now, right, regardless, I'm sure FS, TNS, right? I'm sure they would have loved to fight, kind of get a little appetizer, if you will, right, against Noir and PSC here in the middle, but there's just no way to do that, unfortunately. The last thing I'm going to mention is just this kind of idea of this turret kind of barricade, or just this early Zone 1 fighting, I should say, is let me talk about that real quick, is, for me, the biggest challenge with fighting in Zone 1 is that if you lose, right, which usually is the case for the winner, but the loser, typically, obviously, you still have your days to resurge, right? But that obviously is going to be impactful. You still can resurge at the last minute, but what happens if you resurge and then they resurge as well and they follow you, right? You basically would have to wait for the last day or the last 12 hours or the last 2 or 3 hours, right? If you really want to cut it close, right? You tell everyone, hey, we're going to resurge in these last 4 hours or last 2 hours or even the last 60 minutes, right? If you really want to have the highest chance of separating yourself between the victors, right, versus those that end up losing in the zone. And that typically is just not a good feeling for anyone, right? Sure, it might be fun in the short term to do the fight out, and it may be, yeah, if it's mainly a spender alliances, it really may be less impactful for you to move and just spend to rebuild up. But if you get into a situation where they do follow you and they're constantly fighting you and you're just stuck there, or you have players that are stuck in the zone and can't get out, that can be a very poor negative player experience. And so This is one of the reasons why I very much believe in home kingdom starting zones, and then you just allow for neutral PvP sites like the Runics, like the neutral PvP sections on the map, and you allow those in every single zone up until the final where everyone has to converge. I personally think that's a great way to do it because it allows for you to have PvP at every single stop, and then you get to have the big war at the end, and then people can, invade zone by zone as passes open throughout the timeline of the kingdom, right? I personally think that's a great way to do it. I think there's other ways to approach it, but I think that's a pretty great standard to look at. I just think there's a lot of value in having home kingdom starting zones because then people don't feel like, hey, they don't have to really be cautious or kind of on their toes in the very beginning. And maybe you just don't have it last that long. Maybe you only just have it last a couple days, no longer than a week. I would say maybe somewhere between that kind of 3 and 5 day range, right before maybe the neutral PvP zones open, or at least long enough where they could build and fill out the home kingdom starting zone with flags and territory, capturing what they need to, behemoths, etc., and then you open up the neutral PvP zones as an example, right? Or you'll open up runic statues first and then maybe the neutral PvP zones next. Again, just kind of brainstorming. Of course, I'd love to know what you guys think. That's my opinion. Of course, I'd love to know yours. I think with that in mind, that is where we're going to end. Thank you so much for jamming with me on this episode. And I'm really excited, man. I can't wait to see how these 9 KvKs, and I should say 10, I don't mean to leave out 155 and 173. We'll definitely be covering that as well, as I am still waiting to reach out to them and ask them kind of what their matchups are, because I really should be including them in this as well. And it is top of mind. Again, that's, I think, where we're going to leave you. Let me know what you guys think in those comments down below. That's going to be it. As always, until next time, I will catch you later.